Alright boys, we have our first game at the European Wildcard Qualifier for WCS. The first season in 2014 for the Challenger League, and starting to the top right of the map of Yonsu in our first best of 3 of the day, we have Nogard, and he's going up against the player starting to the bottom left. This is the Korean player. This is Yoda. So we have a Terran versus Zerg, and it's going to be a good one. In case that you're wondering why is a Korean player allowed to play in the European qualifier, basically whoever has 200 wins on the European ladder is allowed to qualify, as far as I know. So Yoda and a couple of other Koreans were just putting a lot of practice time on the European server and were able to qualify for this one qualifier tournament and have now a chance to qualify for WCS Europe. And he is going up against the Zerg player first here on this first map. The winner of this best of 3 is going up against Dimaga in the second round of the qualifier. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see who's going to qualify for that, if we're going to have a ZVZ or if Yoda is able to make that happen. Because right now this guy, of course, I think he's still staying in Korea. I don't think that he's currently in Europe, which means that he has quite a delay to the European server. It's actually funny if you talk with the professional players about the delays that they have when they play. For example, State was playing from the States on the Korean server a couple of times, and he says that the delay from Korea back to the North American server is actually way worse for him, and the European lag is much worse even than the lag that a Korean player or that someone in Korea has to North America. So that's pretty harsh conditions, but on the other hand the Koreans are in terms of playing pretty well advanced, and therefore it's going to be very difficult for Yoda's opponent and also the other 3 Koreans that are participating in this qualifier to really come through here. But we're going to find out how that's actually going to work out. Right now what we already have on screen is Nogard starting things off with the hatch first, going up into a spawning pool, whereas starting to the bottom left, no surprises here, we have barracks and gas taken for Yoda, starting things off with a Reaper and then going straight, of course, into scouting. Will most likely drop his natural pretty soon, just in a normal Reaper expand that we're going to see from him. But just in general, this is one of the ways that how the Koreans can participate in the other regions, which in my opinion is a very good solution, since you want to have a little bit of competition. There were some people who were saying in the past that they say it's much better if you just region lock completely, and I absolutely disagree with that sentiment. Just because it is definitely an issue where you need to have a good competition, and players that are better than others should be rewarded for how well they play. Just as a side note, the small lags that we have here seem to be server side, so don't be surprised by that. I think they're going to get a little bit better, but we had a pretty bad spike just a second ago, so let's hope that there's... actually, it looks like it's running a little bit more smoother, but we still have these micro lags that occasionally occur. We are currently looking at a Korean player playing on the European server, and then Nogard, of course, being a European player himself. So there is going to be a little bit of lag issues. We had the problem in a few of the qualifiers yesterday already, but I think it got a lot smoother within the last few seconds already. So at this point we have the double base for Nogard already. Of course, for the Terran player we also see the command center coming into place now, and we have the Overlord just spotting that, double checking that there is actually a natural for his opponent. What he doesn't know just yet is that there's already a third base on the high ground being built by Yoda. So the Korean player here still straight going into a double command center, and still trying to find out with the Reaper what exactly is happening here. We already have a couple of Zerglings on the high ground just waiting for the Reaper to jump up, and Overlords help you out quite a little bit in the early stages of the game to just keep track of the Reaper, to find out where exactly he's positioned, and then you can accordingly just react to his movements. It's very important just for you to make sure that your drones are safe, that you have the queens at the front. It's of course great if you can take down the Reaper to deny the scouting information. That has to be like your #1 priority, because you want to hide for as long as possible how much gas you have. By the way, talking a little bit about strategies here, we have double gas taken at the 6-minute mark, and what I'm very surprised of is that we have 6 queens. It's not only just simply no gas into a 4-queen build, but we have actually 6 queens being built here. That's a pretty crazy amount of queens for the early game. That will definitely help him to shut down any kind of Hellion harass and also Reaper harass. Also, Banshees will not want to be an option here. But we have now 4 gases taken, even not only 2, but 4. And that starts to get a little bit crazy here. So I'm not quite sure what exactly Nogard is up to, but that is already leading us to a very interesting game, with the Roach Warren also being built. And with 6 queens in the picture, I would assume that a Roach Warren is basically designed to do some damage, and not only as a defensive means, that he wants to play with a Roach composition in this game. Because if you have 6 queens, you do not really need Roaches to be safe against anything. Not necessarily. You could skip that and go into a faster speed, and there's also the range upgrade immediately. And we could definitely see a timing with speed for the Roaches and double upgrades. It's a little bit more old school. It's a timing that players like Hyun have used. One of the maps where it was used in the past is Acheron Wastes. And I did actually a tutorial with the timing. It's on my YouTube channel, on youtube.com/KhaldorTV. There's a tutorial playlist, and in there is also this exact build, if he really goes for it. Where you go into the lair tech, you have the double upgrades, and you start an attack with 1/1 plus speed to go for a massive amount of launches and just attack. You usually take the 3rd base with it as well, and that's exactly what Nogard is currently doing. He doesn't have to go for that kind of all-in, but we see that Yoda is already preparing for one. Because he's looking at that and he's like, this is a little bit weird. You have 6 queens in total, you go for the Roach Warren, you have double upgrades already and the tech, so he builds 2 additional bunkers here. He really wants to be safe. He actually walled off completely at this position. And it looks more and more like we are really going to see a commitment by Nogard. He's already looking at 108 maximum supply, whereas he has 82. So that's definitely something that he could try to do right now. The queens might even help out with that kind of strategy, considering that he has 6 of them and could even spread the creep a little bit more aggressive than he already does. So, looking at this game, I actually think that he's really attempting to break through the defense of his opponent. The problem for him is going to be that there's not only a double bunker, but we also have siege tanks being built. It's just a matter of time. The double bunker is going to give him a lot of safety, and we have now Marauders coming into play too. But for him, it's really a matter of delaying his the attack of his opponent a little bit. But as I say that, it looks like Nogard actually, now that he knows what's up, he scouts with an Overseer and he sees those extra bunkers, he sees the siege tank, and he kind of knows that this is not going to be as easy as he was hoping for. So he deviates a little bit from the idea that he had there and goes straight into just droning up. So he has a bit of flexibility here, but the danger that he has, and that's something that we talked about just recently, is that you have a very bad composition in the terms that Roaches scale badly into the late game. So you have to make something with them happen. You can't stay with this composition for the entirety of the game. That's just not going to work for you. So he's sticking it out with a few Roaches that he has just for now. Might drop a Hydra then and just go for a Roach Hydra composition and try to bust through. We saw that a couple of times already. Could also just lead into a higher attack a bit later down the road. We could see all kinds of things from him, to be quite honest with you. Now that he started the +2 attack upgrade, it really looks like he wants to stand doesn't want to transition into Lingmeter Baneling or anything like it, but rather stay with a ranged unit composition, and there's also the Hydra Den, as already expected. Another option would have been to try to make Swarm Hosts work, which is a little bit more tricky against Terran in this situation, just because of the scans, and you need a very good position for that to really make it happen. But the 6 queens help him to really dominate the map with creep tumors and to really spread the creep pretty far out. Yoda, on the other hand, is absolutely not intimidated by this at all. He didn't really put on aggression. He realized that he's much more in danger of being attacked than falling behind because of a greedy Zerg player. So he just takes his 3rd base, he builds the siege tank count up, and is in a position where he can now just simply establish himself this 3rd, secure it, and then on 3 bases start to build up his own strategy and go into it. So looking at the upgrades here, we have +2/+2 faster for his opponent. It's much faster actually for Nogard than it is for Yoda. But Yoda has a 3 base economy. He has good units coming out, a good composition, going into a very bio-heavy play, but supported by siege tanks. A bit more old school. A lot of Terran players will still stick it out with the Middle Mines, just because that gives you a lot more mobility. They are much faster and much more flexible than a siege tank. They can also hit air. Whereas with siege tanks alone, you're of course really well set up against the composition that Nogard uses now. One of the main reasons why I think Yoda went for siege tanks instead of using Widow Mines is just great composition against Roach and Hydra. Another awesome thing is that there is not really a lot of anti-air that can help you shut drops down. Of course the Hydras help you with that, but if you really drop or abuse a high ground situation like that, you can do a lot of damage. And that's exactly what happens here. So pretty annoying at this point for Nogard already. Yoda really using the terrain of the map to his advantage, and you can already tell that this is not easy to break through. But at the same time, the Zerg player is trying to go to the bottom. He's completely obliterated here though. The siege tank's doing so much damage and way too much bio. At the same time, this attack at the top left is still going strong. The drop at the mineral patches is helping him out a lot, and he's just baiting the units into the siege tank fire. So things are currently not looking all that good for Nogard. He has still control over the map with terms of creep spread and has very good vision. That helps him a lot, of course, but at the same time he's really struggling to hold this base, to keep the base mining, and he already lost a lot more resources than his opponent just because of the attack that we saw at the third base of the Korean Terran player. So once again moving in, trying to snipe the siege tanks, and he's able to pull that off. But he's losing a lot in the process here. But he at least is able to just secure himself that mineral line once again. But now it's time for Yoda to move out, and that's the cleaning crew that we have there for the Terran player, just moving in and taking everything down. He can lift in those medivacs immediately and just fall back if he wants to with the afterburners. On the retreat, that's what he's currently at, but yeah, he has still a pretty good position there. 2-2 is done. +3 attack has been started. We even see a Ghost Academy for nukes, and at the same time we have Nogard moving in once again, and I think he's overextending a little bit here. He cannot attack into siege tanks with his composition, not if he doesn't have the superior numbers, and that's not really the case. So suddenly the Zerg player is really losing a lot of ground here, just being shut down completely by Yoda, who's now edging slowly towards that Xelnaga watchtower in the lower center of the map. The transition for Nogard is now starting to happen with an infestation pit, but I think he's already a little bit too late for that, because he doesn't really have a great economy that allows him to simply switch his tech up. We have him in a position where we have immediately a 4th base being built, and that 4th is quite late, because so far it was only 3 base versus 3 base. Once again, here we go, siege tanks being sieged up, and all those Hydras are now in trouble. They just melt away too much bio. The 3-3 not even a factor in the game just yet. Both of them are the same amount of upgrades, but Yoda is just crushing through the forces of Nogard, takes the lead in the best of 3 series, and claims victory on Yonsu, map number 1.